Hello, 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 world. Hello, everyone in the Betaverse and those of you who are beyond but soon to be in it. I'm Ryan Erickson, contributing artist for Level 42, and we are here at BetaCodex Live, as we have been for 25 episodes, with me and with the inimitable, fantastic, and I'll think of an adjective again for Niels. Niels Flagging here with me today. Hello.
Hello, Ryan. Hello, world.
Hello, world.
This is episode 25. I can't believe it. I still can't believe it.
I know I was reflecting on that earlier today, and like what happened this year. What happened this year is we have been doing this thing since May, and it has been a great ride. Now in this,
who would have thought, right, that we would get here?
Who would have thought? We were talking about this, I think, as early as last year, and just kind of, but have made it happen this year, and so much stuff to reflect on, especially at this time of year, the end of the year. And
I even think it's now with episode 25. It's worth maybe dedicating a few moments to reflect upon what we have done.
Yes,
because mostly, admittedly, we have talked about ourselves, right? For most episodes. I mean, we have had a couple of guests. Last episode, we had Paul Tolchinsky, wonderful pioneer of organizational development. We had Jose Leal, I think 3 episodes ago, and talked with him about radical organizational change and transformation and the much needed organizational renaissance. Yes. We have had, in one of the first episodes, we had Silke, of course, Silke Hermann and Daniel Mazik talking about Open Space Beta. Yes. Did we have other guests?
No, I think that's... Oh, yes, we did. Mohammed Wahidi talking about the doings and goings on in his neck of the world in Kuwait. Yes. Yes. Mohammed, if you're out there, we are more than willing to amplify your invitation to the world yet again and make that happen with the open space.
And overall, we didn't have so many guests in this, let's say, call it show or podcast.
Yes.
So one might wonder, are we doing the same kind of banal conversation happening in this? I think we have. Recently, I looked over the topics on YouTube and on the BetaCodex website, and I think we have covered quite a fefew kind of serious stuff, really. And that has been always our ambition, I think, right? To cover serious and relevant, but not too, we always wanted the conversation between us to be a little bit edgy, so that we agree occasionally, even if we tend to agree, of course, on many topics, of course. But we try to keep it, a little bit edgy and not so easy to agree with, and relevant, of course, right? So we covered control, we covered relative targets, for example, a couple of times, cell structure design a couple of times.
Decision making, which is their research. Again, going just the titles of the episodes, the research, decision making. Another topic which I think is well overdue to come back is the principles of consulting with this work, with decentralization, with federalization, with transparency, all that stuff.
How to distinguish serious consulting from the BS that's out there.
Exactly.
And I think we've tried to cover quite serious topics, and any feedback is welcome, of course. I mean, please be kind, please be gentle, but we welcome feedback and voices on what we have done so far and how we have done it.
Yeah,
we need to cover serious stuff, and not just to be light and banal and fluffy on all of these things. And today, I think we have a topic that might seem obvious to some or simple, but I think it's one of the most dangerous topics we have covered so far. I think it's a very serious one with many layers and top levels.
Yeah, and I think partially this came up as what I think may start to happen, or what I was thinking about having happen, is from some feedback on one of your posts about again, experimentation being the topic of today. That it really has no place in this, and there was some some pushback on that. Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yes. It's always like that. Always when I address this topic, there is some pushback and some, yeah, that's your opinion, right? Niels, you have your opinion about experiments. You don't like it, but it's not about liking. It's serious stuff. That's why I think it's very serious stuff, because let me put it a little bit brutally. I think there's a lot of ignorance out there about what this is about. I think we want to get to that. Why there is facts and actual science that dispel or that invalidates experimentation in organizational development and change, right? And we want to talk about this a little bit, even if it may sound polemic or provocative. To me, it is not. It is very serious, a very serious topic. But you start.
Okay, so my thought on this was specifically is that we talk. Maybe the context was organizational design. That design implies intent and implies a context and implies some constraints around making thoughtful decisions about what you want to do and designing constraints for an organization. And why would you go through and again, I had to, as usual, I'd say, what is Niels talking about when he said this has no place? But then it came to the idea of intent and setting constraints within which experimentation can happen. And that, again, that's what I was thinking of when I said, well, why not explore this? Where are experiments relevant? Where do they make sense? And also, we think about experimentation and the scientific method. We've often talked about theories, that there needs to be good theory upon which to perform those experiments.
Yes.
And so that's where I came to, is that, all right, this fluffy talk about, experiment, fail fast, do this and do that.
Yes.
There's a place for that in this unknown when we are seeking and searching and probing, but not in the upfront. I guess in the design in the design process. So
yes, I think it's worth to distinguish between different spheres where experimentation is fair and right and necessary, and where it is not, or maybe not, as we haven't covered this enough. But let's first cover where it's probably where we probably agree where experimentation has its place. Take an example: product development. I mean, we could talk about certain sciences in which experimentation up to a certain point is necessary, but let's talk about businesses. Of course, if you have a product, you should experiment. You shouldn't maybe not experiment an unsafe drug with real world patients, because that's where we get when we experiment with people, which we will cover today. Well, right? Experimentation with people is anti-social, anti-humanist, and anti-everything. Yeah, but for example,
it's irresponsible and high stakes.
Exactly. So, but there are certain matters in product development where you have to experiment to get real data, to get an idea, to progress, to check your assumptions. For example, Google. I remember now this Google Glasses story where they experimented very quickly to put these first Google Glasses. It took them 5 minutes, I think, to assemble the first prototype, or 3 minutes to assemble the first prototype of Google Glass. 10 years, 15 years ago, now, not sure when it was, right? So experimentation there is fair and well, right? To get to a prototype fast, and then to better prototype. So experimentation has its place in work and in science. We don't have to cover that extensively. I think there are sciences in which experimentation is all well and great, when humans especially are not related to the experiment, right? Or not impacted by the experiment.
Well, yeah, when you're not experimenting on people with a high stakes of harm and damage. And
exactly. Yeah. Now, when we get to the realm of organizational development, org design, as you mentioned, organizational transformation and change and stuff, organizational psychology, organizational behavior, there it gets tricky, right? Is experimentation valid and fair? And you're suspecting that, yes, it has its place in some cases.
Well,
right? Yeah.
Well, the play, and we're talking about the place in product development. That's again where I came from, in enterprise software and things like that. When we're dealing with the complicated domain, so we have some boundaries within which that this action creates this result. We'll document that result and see what happens with that.
Yes.
Is the product doing what it is supposed to do, and giving feedback?
And isn't that interesting? I mean, especially in the agile sphere, with both of us are quite connected as well. I think people have drawn the conclusion that as you need experimentation in software development and this iterative approach, for example, it is in a way an experimentation approach, right? The minimum viable product approach and so on. It carries the ideology of experimentation, which is not vague. You don't want to put a bad product out, but you accept that it is never perfect, and so on and so on. So, and then at a certain point, I think Agilists made the wrong move, went to the dark side, saying, okay, if this is good for software development, it should apply to organizational development as well. I think that's the problem, right?
Yeah. No? And we talk about, well, what is an organization? I think we haven't talked about that here necessarily, but it is at its core, it is the communication between people.
Yes.
So when you're doing, pardon?
That's systems theory, right?
Yeah.
Organizations consist 100% of communication, nothing else.
Right. Yes. Communications and agreements. And if you're experimenting, that to me has a sense of you're not being authentic or real. There's some sense of deceit and manipulation and what might be the impact of that. If we're experimenting on communication methods, I'm the experimenter. I'm the laboratory mad scientist, and I'm going to design an experiment to see what happens with you. You know, this is the Milgram experiment. This is the stuff that happened at Stanford way back in the day. This is the MK Ultra type. We're going to do psychological experiments on people and therapize and that kind of stuff, which is you mentioned, and this is the point where we agree that it's really inhumane to do that.
Yeah. Now people might say, okay, we are both fans of Kurt Lewin, and Kurt Lewin is the inventor of action research, among other things, right? Isn't action research experimenting? And I would always argue, no, it's not experimenting at all. Action research means...
Say more, please.
Yeah, I think which is why I think the topic is not so trivial, right? There are distinctions to be made, for example, between action research and experiments. And action research means to have a hypothesis, to have theory, to do things with intent and to do them consistently, and then to learn more. But it doesn't mean dabbling, for example. Action research is not about dabbling, trying something out. It's not about that. It's about intent and principles and conceptual, intervention on a system, and then basing the research on that instead of trying just looking for empirical data, impacting the system with intent and consistency, and of course based upon ethical assumptions,
and solid theory.
Yes, and then to prove a point, but not to dabble, And experimentation, I think, on the other side is dabbling. And if you look at recent books that propose experimentation as a method of organizational development, like this one by Gary Hamel and Michel Zanini, it's even on the BetaCodex.org book recommendation list, by the way. Today, I looked through it again, and I got a little bit of a feeling in my stomach, and not a good feeling. So I will reconsider. I would consider again taking it off the list. But for the time it's there. Gary Hamel, Michel Zanini, Humanocracy. It's a book that fervently argues that experimentation is necessary to try management innovation. Yes, and I think these two figures, Gary Hamel, of course, is a kind of a hero of organizational leadership.
Yes.
Strategy least, yes. So he's among our heroes, let's put it like this. But their recommendations on organizational development, how to bring Humanocracy, BetaCodex, or better improvement and so on into an organization, I think it lacks reflection. It's dangerous. They make dangerous suggestions. because they suggest experimentation just like that. It's nothing. They're lacking theory about organizational change, I think. They're not so interested in it. They don't do it in practice, I suppose, either. I looked at their website recently and I didn't see any serious involvement. So, I think there's a propaganda around experimentation that came up maybe 10 years ago, I think.
That I'm trying to think when Lean Startup came out.
10 years ago, maybe, right? 12 years ago. I'm not quite sure. L. Rees, Lean Startup, yes.
Yeah, Eric Rees.
Doing this kind of stuff as well, yes.
Well, it's the whole build, measure, learn cycle. Build, measure, learn. Build, measure, learn. Well, that implies you are building on something that can be measured in some way, whether you're measuring it. Usually, and this is also comes, it ties into the whole OKR discussion about measuring results, measure what matters, and that, well, what is measurable? Can you measure? How do you measure humans' organizational change? How do you measure a transformation that happens in a belief system or in that environment? So there's build, measure, learn is great for products, but is horrible for people.
Yes, it is inhumane. It is. I'm using this word maybe too often, but it is fascist. Experimenting with humans and with human interactions tends to be fascist. It's a dangerous path. And this is not to speak about the authors of these concepts. I'm talking about their responsibility and their incorrect prescriptions.
So
it's very important to understand that organizations are about communication. Social systems are about communication and people, and of course, their ethical stuff applies. So we should never experiment. We should have robust theory. We should recognize what's out there, what's not out there, what we know about the social sciences, which is an awful lot. And not experiment, but we should be consistent, act with measure, but not with measurements, I think. Yes, we should act with want, but not try. There's this Yoda adage, do or do not, there is no try. We should act like that, right? Because this kind of dabbling, and again, experimenting is fundamentally about dabbling. And who doesn't understand that should work with more distinctions and question more what she or he is talking about and what he or she means with experiments.
And again,
not happy with what I'm saying.
Well, don't dabble with people. Right.
Don't dabble with people. Dabble with steaks if you want. I always argue that we should dabble with steak. If you love barbecue, dabble with your steak. Burn it, throw it away. Which is not eco advice I'm giving here. But I'm using this as a metaphor. If you want to dabble with food a little, or with paper. If you can burn paper or whatever. In your home and burn some stuff, some material. Burn some wood, if you like, which is bad in the environment. But
it's the stakes. What are the stakes that we are working with, and what is and this is the whole.
No, you're talking about steaks we eat or the steaks?
I'm talking about STAES.
Yes. What are the stakes? Yes. In organizational development, hurting people. Hurting social system, even from shareholders to employees to clients. I think all kinds of stakeholders, hurting people and making people suffer. That's the risk. And I think what I always argue is that people who promote experimenting, they do not mean harm. I'm not trying to say that. I just think that they are sloppy. Their thinking is sloppy. Yeah. Because if in the BetaCodex there's one important thing that I think protects us from the dabbling and the experimenting, which is that the BetaCodex has these two facets: do this, not that; do beta, not alpha. And there are 12 principles. So this codex, and it's consciously called a codex, it gives you an idea. You have the booklet that we did the translation together into English. Yes. The laws of
a little bit of editing.
Yeah, and you did incredibly good work on the editing, I must say. Impressive. It was lovely to do that with you. But during the editing process, I also learned that how seriously you take this work, which was very interesting and important for me. So this codex, which you can see in the booklet that Ryan is holding up again, it has these pages of sub principles, right? If you can show one of those pages. So it has not just 12 principles, that's one of the 12 principles, but it has the sub principles, maybe 12 on every page, right? Of the 12. So it's 12 times 12 principles or so. And this is kind of the yardstick of what's good, what's not right, what's not right if you want to apply these principles, which are based on democratic based on democratic principles, humanistic principles, the assumptions of human theory, why human nature assumptions, and so on. So I would never say that in my work I do experimenting. Never ever would I do that. How would I call it experimenting? We know what a company wants to get away from, and we should have a very clear idea where it should get. Are there several options where the client can go? Yes, there are always several. For example, designing a pay system without bonuses. So, but how? The principles are designed very strictly in the booklet that you just showed, right? Or even in the BetaCodex. What should pay be like? Do we experiment with pay? No, never, ever. You should never do that. Do we experiment with targets? No, targets should be relative. That means this and this and this and this and this. So no experimenting with beta, right?
Well, and that's when you are part of an intervention, and you talked about an intervention that was someone wanted it, and it's going to happen very soon in the neck of the woods, that the reason that they would come to you, to Red 42, and to what we would do, is there's an idea that we're coming with a theory. We're coming with cell design, relative targets, open space beta, and the BetaCodex. And the principle is the BetaCodex, moving from alpha to beta. So that's not an experiment. That is
do or do not. There is no try. Exactly.
There is no try.
Yeah.
And you have to want it.
There is another conceptual problem, I think, with experimenting, and which you just hinted at in a way. And that is anybody who will merely experiment. And part of experimenting is to try labs, pilots, hacking work. All that is part of the same experimenting for me. There are different sub-concept of experimenting, right? Labs and pilots in organizations. Right? I think there are several, in fact, dozens of reasons why you should never experiment in organizations. And one is that by experimenting, you will never bring out the energy to the system to make the significant changes. I mean, why is open space beta based on invitation to everyone in the organization, so that all the willing can do the work together, so that engagement is drawn up, right? That's something we learned from Daniel Mesek's work.
Indeed, yes.
Agility. And that's a far cry from experimenting. That means, no, we do it together with all the willing in little or no time, 90 days. That is not that thing. It's not experimenting. And before you start, before the sponsor invites everybody to and authorizes all the willing, the sponsor must really, really want this kind of change or transformation or organizational renaissance, whatever you want to call it, and must be aware of the principles that will be applied throughout the 90 days. So this is a far cry from let's go out experimenting.
No,
this is figure out. It's not the same energy, It's much higher energy we are talking about, right?
Let's figure out the principles. Which there's a right place for that. There's a time to observe and reflect and to develop the knowledge, the theory. So we're not talking about development of a theory here.
Oh yeah, that should precede the doing, of course. Yes.
Right. So this isn't. I think this could be a misconception of the Prime OS, Open Space Beta, Open Space Agility format. Yeah. Is that okay? Well, you have your invitation where you're kind of tilling the soil, putting together the introduction of the leadership storytelling that will happen. This introduction to the writing of the story that happens in the 90 days. So in that 90 days, you start from a point of immaturity to an additional level, a leveling up of competence within that. So And I think even in open space agility, Dan talks about that there is experimentation of processes, or which part of Agile are we going to use after we've defined it, which part of Kanban, which part of Scrum. And I would venture to say in a BetaCodex, or in an open space beta cycle in the middle, there is experimentation happening with the what that's happening. That how are these, are we getting the results? Is this cell structure right? Are these cells in the right place? What are we learning? What is this organizational learning that's happening? How is that experimentation, or how is that not experimentation? So I think, and you can shoot down, I think that is experimentation. If we are, and this is not the organizational design part. This is creating the learning, creating the artifacts of what that would be.
I would not call it, even there, I would not call it, and we don't have to agree. We're doing this again, right? We do not have to agree, and I'm not trying to convince you, but I think experimentation is not the right word for what you describe. I think improving, developing is the right word. So, okay, we are using Scrum, and now we're considering Kanban, for example. I'm not sure if that's a good example, but we have a production in which we do, we have to do equipment changes, changes of setup to do different products, and we go from 4 hours of switching to 20 minutes or so. That's improving. It's not experimenting. So you should always have a theory and method. That's something that Deming talks about all the time. So we should have an idea in our minds about what we want to achieve and how. We need to discuss the how, the means of how. And it's clearly not experimenting. It's doing the work, it's improving, it's developing, it's acting, which is part of the PDCA cycle, for example. That's a very serious tool. It's totally not experimenting. That's why it's PDCA. It's not vulgar. It's not
plan, do, study, regular, or PDSA, or whichever one you want to go with. And so in the doing, there is a decision that's made that is this 4 hour to 20 minute, 800% improvement, or that we have not tried it yet. We are saying that this team, we are going to communicate with conflict, in the decision-based authority circle that we have, or this ensemble, that this is what we are going to do with this particular process. Again, I like that you bringing it to a manufacturing or to a non-software development type environment, because I think that's one of the beauties of the BetaCodex, is that it applies outside of the narrow domain of Agile software development. Sure. What if what we decide to do in week 1, by week 2, well, we're not getting this percentage of improvement that we wanted? What needs to change based on the checking and acting part of that cycle in order to achieve that improvement that we want to have happen?
Yes, but failing to achieve the objective does not mean that with hindsight the improvement has become an experiment. It's not like that. It doesn't work like that. If you have intent, or will, or want, you start with. If you have method, then there is no experimentation. And if you know that it is an improvement, I think that's maybe the most important thing. You should also evaluate, is this really an improvement, or are we doing it for no purpose? For example, the fully automated factory. It's a wet dream of some designers.
The robotics thing, yeah.
Yeah, the fully robotized factory. And of course, if you think for 4 or 5 minutes about this, you will find, okay, the day you inaugurate that factory, it is already obsolete. It will never be capable of improving, because there are no people who can do Kaizen, who can improve the factory. A no-person factory it's impossible to improve it. So sometimes you should ask yourself, is what we are doing, does it benefit anybody, or does it work? Is it correct? Is it an improvement? Is it better?
Well, you can.
Well, kind of
is
judgment
faster better? Is producing more widgets in less time? Can't you do that?
I always tell my clients, for example, when we approach transformation, beta transformation with open space beta or just cell structure design in whatever way, I always tell my clients, look, you probably or still have these 200 questions, unanswered questions about cell structure design, open space beta, how is beta better than alpha, and so you have them all in your head. We should not start doing anything before you have an answer to all your 200 questions. If you have 200 questions, they must all be answered. And for every single one.
Before the 90 days.
Before the 90 days, before you start acting. There's a thinking part. And you must, and that is what I tell my clients, to each of the 200 questions, the answer in beta must be at least as good as your answer in alpha or the answer that you currently have. It should be better, and usually it must be better. But sometimes
why else would you be doing this?
And if there is just
Paul talked about this last week, right? So who cares if you're decentralizing everything, whatever? If you're not producing the results you thought,
exactly,
why do it in the first place?
So you must have 200 very good reasons to do beta. And if you have those 200 good reasons, then there's no experimentation space left. Then it just means okay, I still have two options. So we can have our compensation system like that and like that. We can have our reports in this format or that format, more visuals or not. We can start with the peer recruiting right away or just in 6 months. Those are the options. But it's not about, is peer recruiting good or bad? That should be answered before you dabble, right? Before you do things, so that you do not dabble, right? So this is part of the energy thing I was talking about. We need to be convinced of what we're doing. We must know what we're doing before we start doing. Otherwise, it's just irresponsible, fraudulent, irresponsible.
How would you know you were getting an improvement if you hadn't defined enough up front to know that yes, this is better or this is not? What does better mean? What does better look like? That's a discussion that needs to happen before you start doing it. Okay, I agree with that.
Exactly.
All right.
And it's a matter of energy. It's a matter of ethics. It's a matter even of practicability, because practically speaking, what Hamel and Zanini, what they suggest here, and they even say it in their book, it will take many, many years. How is that good method? I think it stinks, because
it'll take many years to what?
To get to a
humanocracy.
W. Gore, Handelsbanken, higher, which is a difficult, dangerous case, but still, let's say Handelsbanken. To get to the Handelsbanken models takes many years, but at Handelsbanken it took 12 to 18 months, as far as we know. So no, it doesn't take many years. The Handelsbanken method was better than what this book has to offer. That's, I think, the key point. Or what Toyota did was apparently much more effective than what many people today suggest and think is possible, which is interesting, right? I would say the recommendation of experimentation is just the outcome of a fudgy mind of sloppy theory and sloppy thinking.
Oh, hey, why not do this? Oh, let's see what happens.
Yeah, let's try it out. Yeah, but it's about human people. It's about humans and relations and society. Organizations are about companies and shareholders, about clients and all of that. So, no, let's not experiment. Hell no, right? But I think the experimentation propaganda of the last decade or so has led us to a depreciation of seriousness in our industry. A serious depreciation. It has become acceptable and accepted, I think, to talk like that about organizational development. Hey, let's do hacks. When I saw the first hack books appearing 8 or 10 years ago, I was terrified. Some of these books have good suggestions that are very beta, right? But how can you hack an organization? It's not, don't hack it. It's not it's not a stake. Don't hack it. And it's not software code either. It's about people, the relationship of people, or maybe even people, depending on your definition on organizations. So no place to hack. Yeah, do what or not. No try.
Well, this is partially one of those hacking movements. It's biohacking. I don't know. This is this idea of taking particular medications.
That sounds like a thing about farting.
Oh God!
To me, sorry, like biogas, something like that. Yeah, okay.
Biomass. You know,
yes,
biomass.
Biohacking. What is it about? But that's not organization related.
No. I think that's
about your diet.
Well, we talk about hacking in the software realm, and again, I'm not a coder. I can't speak with any authority about what hacking is.
No, that's where it comes from. That's where the hacking thing comes from. Hacking software code, so hack into a system, a software system.
Right, but there's a difference between a good hack and a bad hack, sure. And that if a hack gets the same outcome, the same again, the same outcome or output with 3 steps instead of 40 steps and calls of subroutines here and there in different databases. You know, oh no, if we can do this and quicker, I mean that's a hack. It's about how you define it. And then I think
sometimes I think hacking the same problem applies. Sometimes we call it that what you just described for me is not I'm not sure. I'm not a software developer myself, but when I have a software company, Comenius, of course, as you know, software code as well, and we always have this conversation never about hacking but about cleaner code or clean code or
refactoring
exactly, or cleaning up the mess that's in our code and that kind of stuff. And that, would I call that hacking? I think hacking is, the original idea is to hack into somebody else's system. Isn't it?
There is, hackers. I remember the movie from our days back in the 90s. There's a movie about hackers.
It was a movement, the movement of hacking. Chaos Computer Club was the most important association of hackers in Germany. Chaos Computer, but they did serious stuff. I mean, they had a social ideology. Now, I understand that the idea of hacking sounds very attractive, like experiments. That sounds very attractive. You could do little things, little steps, as most people change as a journey, again, creeping in as a concept, as an ideology, so to speak. And so you hack yourself into the improvement, and you hack yourself into humanocracy, and you explore and you experiment. It sounds very sexy, right?
You're on the edge. You're innovative, and that
thing is, modern organizational development should be done with everyone of the whole system. Ideally, that's something we can learn from Marvin Weisbord. When organizational change was proposed first by people like Frederick Taylor as a science, as a method, the expert improved other people's work. Then the experts started improving other people's work. Then everybody started improving everybody's work. That's Kaizen, for example. And then experts started changing the system. That's the systemic movement of organizational development. And now I think we reach the age where everybody should work the system together. And with approaches like open space beta, you can do that. Yeah, but that's not hacking. That's not experimenting. That's not piloting. That's about thinking, okay, how can we upgrade our system? How can we overcome our system so that it becomes much, much better? And we should have a damn good idea about how to do that before we even start doing it. That's the seriousness of it all, is to know what results you want to achieve and why and how.
Well, that's why we bring 12 principles into it,
which is damn fine reading, I think, for everyone. I think we can recommend that. It only has 32 pages or something like that, so it's the most condensed.
Well, it's condensed, but it's rich. Well, that's
very rich. Oh yes,
condensing is.
You can work on a single page for a day. I think that's something you said one day.
Translation. I know how many hours I worked on each of the principles to go through each of them. So I understood what that meant. So if you do a transformation, this book's got to be part of it, and that, or someone, you have to have, let's say, 90 cycles, Comenius cycles, with this book, with a principle or a couple principles at a time, to say what is the theory that we're enacting, and that it takes long enough to be able to explain connected self-organization, and connectedness with purpose, not dependency. And so you go through the 12 principles are hard enough for some people to understand.
Oh, right? No, they are totally hard to understand. It took me years to understand them. I think you already had the advantage that we had pretty much pre-articulated all the aspects in that booklet, But for me to figure out the elements of this, and it, of course, this figuring out the details, it served us also to validate if the principles were good enough, of course. And it should always be like that. We should always validate, are the principles good enough? Are the principles below the principles good enough? Are they still valid? Do they hold up with today's world? So everybody could do that with that booklet as well. Validate the principles and analyze, in a way, their own organizations, their work environments. Mm-hmm.
And if you're curious, it's only $10.
It's less than $10, I think. In Germany, it's in Europe, it costs €7. So it's very cheap. That booklet, yes. Very, very cheap. And what else? I think I want to bring one more thing to this discussion about experimentation. Is that okay?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
A little over the usual time, but fuck it. I want to bring.
Yeah, we're 40 minutes in for YouTube. We can say fuck it now.
So yeah, of course. Now only the adults are still here, so all the children have stopped listening. So we can say anything we like. I want to bring Harry Bosch into the conversation, a hero of ours, Hieronymus Harry Bosch.
Yep.
Who's not a real person.
The Michael Connelly books. Again, yes. I've not read the books.
I didn't read the books either. I'm only a big fan of the TV series, which is on Amazon.
Amazon Prime.
Seven seasons so far.
Mm. Yep.
It is called Bosch, and the last 2 seasons are called Bosch Legacy. So 5 seasons Bosch, 2 seasons Bosch Legacy. Apparently brilliant series of, I think, 20 books or so by Michael Connelly, great author who also authored a wonderful series of novels. Do you know which one? Another great detective guy. And there's a movie. And there is one season of a TV show. It's about it's not really about a detective. It's about a lawyer, the Lincoln Lawyer.
Lincoln Lawyer. Okay.
It's brilliant, brilliant TV show. If you haven't seen that, you have to see it. But today we were not called about the Lincoln Lawyer. We called about this other.
Right. The Bosch principle, the
Bosch motto. Yes. At some point in season 6 or so, Harry Bosch's daughter, she says it. Your motto. Everybody counts.
Everybody counts, or no one counts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is very interesting for our topic today, I think. So this is not a quote by a real person. It's a quote from literature, put into the spoken by the character Harry Bosch.
But why is that matter? Because what is his role? He's a homicide detective, right? In the traditional homicide detective, after 48 hours,
in Los Angeles, LAPD, right?
LAPD
gets a little sloppy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not Harry Bosch. He is a fanatic. No. He's a fanatic in a way, and not against anybody, but he has this principle: everybody counts or nobody counts. So for him, every case matters just the same, regardless of the victim's
social status or yes.
In the series, of course, we learn a little bit why that is, because Harry Bosch's mother, when he was a child, 13, 14 years old or so, his mother, who was a prostitute, was murdered. So he does not have this, he doesn't distinguish between a rich victim, a poor victim, homeless or detective who's murdered or so. He doesn't distinguish. Everybody counts and nobody counts. And I think that's a beautiful motto for change, for organizational development. It's a necessary motto. I think it's an ethical, it gives us an ethical look at the ethical standard that we should always adhere to. Everybody counts, nobody counts, which invalidates experimentation, which invalidates pilots and labs and other shit, I think. Yeah, because if you say, okay, let's get convinced first. Do we have a standard? Do we have a codex? Do we have principles we want to adhere to? And then let's apply those principles to literally everybody, including the cleaning personnel or whatever it is, including the third-party suppliers. Everybody or nobody counts.
Or nobody counts. That is, again, one of the deepest parts, and one of the things that really connects me to this work and to the other work in my life is about unconditional respect for the human dignity of the other, right? Not me. And if I respect your dignity. I am not going to harm you. And that is the place that we've come from, so that we can actually be together. You don't fear me and the power that I have. We are power with, and that's the core of respect for the other, and not to other, and that's and I think the tragedy of Bosch's mother, that's that unsolved murder until very.
And he has a couple of other unsolved murders, victim photos on his desk, under the glass plate that he has on his desk. He has these photos of victims, women usually, mostly, I think girls, who he didn't even figure out their names. He wasn't able to even identify them. So they are unsolved, and he has them on his desk all the time, these photos, to remind him of the ethical, let's say, change to the ethical level, the level of ethics that he has to apply.
Ethical standard.
He doesn't want to put more cases there. Yeah, well, more cases there.
And I think that's also about. I think it's again a very, very beta thing to think about, is that, and Deming too. I mean, it's about standards, setting high standards, and doing the work to improve, to meet those high standards. And what are the skills that we need to develop, and to be very intentional about that.
Yes.
And to be very to be very intentional about the standards that we want to, again, as you define we as an organization, you wish to achieve, so that you can succeed in the market. I mean, we could riff for another 40 minutes about why this matters. And
yes. And why the call for experimentation is just unethical. According to Deming, for example, he always says everybody just wants to have pride in their work, right? That's not the correct way to quote it, but all people want to have is to feel pride in their work. Yes, please open the book and correct me. It's one of the first quotes in the book. Yes. I love that. I think it's so intense, and of course Toyota is an embodiment of that principle, in that they preserve the pride of craftsmanship for everyone. That's what they want to produce ultimately. Everybody should be able, and even if you are just cleaning, just doing accounting, just doing whatever, car design, people are entitled to joy in work. Yeah, but there's also this quote next to it, or on the other page, about pride. All that people want is to feel pride in. When one understands who depends on me, then I may take joy in my work. That's brilliant. Exactly. That's another one. So there's a whole range of quotes in this book on this topic, subject matter of pride at work and joy that comes from it. And of course we kick that. We throw it out of the window if we do bits and pieces in organizational development. If we care only about slices or dices or little parts of
it's disrespectful.
In a way, yeah. The doubling is disrespectful. The experiment in the labs, the hacks, they're kind of too little, too late in a way. too feeble-minded.
Half-assed. They're
Half-assed.
half-assed.
That's American. Always good to talk to an American. That's half-assed shit. Yes. Half-assed. Put your whole ass out there. That's Harry Bosch. What Harry Bosch would do, what we should do. Yeah, I think it's very serious. It's that's why I think that show is so brilliant. It's a call even for the viewer. You get a feeling how damn serious he is about the work, and I think we should also be that damn serious about it. And our approach. That's why we always have this conversation. We had this several times in this show. Even everybody deserves beta. Everybody is ready for beta. Everybody deserves beta. Everybody secretly wants beta, even if people are not aware. It's like democracy. Yeah. Democracy is for all. It's for everybody. Everybody is ripe for democracy. However, we have to create these conditions, the systems, so that people can find joy in life and society and at work. And that is not, it's not merely an aspiration. I think it's a very practical thing to adhere to. Very practical. Are we creating the kind of system that will create the conditions for people to behave like people, like craftsmen, like actual human beings, and not like cogs,
Well, and again, there's so much here, and maybe this is another episode in season 3, possibly. It's about citizenship, right? Just because you have a democracy, and there's rules of democracy, principles of democracy, doesn't mean that people are going to behave as citizens. However, the system is responsible for respecting their citizenship and respecting their dignity. That's why there are laws, and laws against, we have a Food and Drug Administration. Again, there's a whole bit about corruption there, but there are laws that protect human bodies from experimentation, from unethical experimentation.
And for good reason. And again, I think we cannot accentuate that too much. It's a matter of ethics and of not timeliness, but of speed. Yeah. Experimentation, the experimentation mode or modes that exist, they will never give us the speed of change so that real overcoming the system can emerge. You will never bring up the energy in experimentation, slicing, dicing, hacking labs and pilots. You will never bring the energy into the system to overcome the boundaries that are there of command and control, for example, of theory X thinking. You can only overcome those limitations and boundaries to significant change if you develop the thinking beforehand, if you in a way establish the boundaries of the BetaCodex, or call it organizational agility or leanness, or the Toyota way, and so on. You have to establish these boundaries before. You have to test them in your mind and the thinking. You have to get convinced. You have to get have
to really, really want it. You have to want it, and
if you fucking want it, as the Americans would say, right?
Fucking want it. If you don't want it, why do it?
Yeah.
Don't
tell me what you want, what you really, really want. So tell me what you want, what you really, really want.
I want to do beta or do nothing else.
If you want to be mine, that's the other part of the song.
Yeah. Zig zig. We will replace that with whatever. Nice.
Should we leave it at that? Yes.
I think so. We're coming to a landing point. I think I'll start here and let you close.
This is how you do it. Quote another song. This is how you do it. And of course, questions, counter arguments, all of that is welcome. Do not believe in anything that we said in this episode or any other. Make up your own mind, right?
Convince yourself. Don't depend on others to convince you.
If you are interested in more about the method we are talking about, invitation-based, time box, and so on, Open Space Beta, the handbook, might be a good starting point or ending point. And of course, the booklet we talked about, the laws of the BetaCodex, is also great.
Everything available at the Red 42 shop, REDFORTY number 2.com.
And with your preferred booksellers, of course, as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Ryan, for this conversation. I had a good time.
I did as well. And we'll land for sure in the back, and I will say a farewell to you for a moment, and then to those out in the Betaverse. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time and attention. I hope, and I know Niels hopes, that this was valuable to you. We will be continuing on into the future, and we are so grateful for you and your colleagues. Thank you very much.